name is Justin Sturgeon. I'm the campus pastor for ECC CUNA. When I was in the military a number of years ago, I had a chaplain who really stood out to me. See, there was lots of chaplains, lots of good chaplains in the military, but this one was exceptional. There was something special about him. See, let me explain. I was in the infantry, and so when we were going somewhere, that means we were walking, and often we were walking with a heavy pack. And so when we walked, our chaplain actually walked with us. When we carried a heavy pack, he carried a heavy pack as well. See, he had the rank and the privilege that he would have been able to ride in the support vehicle, and no one would have blinked an eye at that. No one would have thought anything of it. But this chaplain did what we did. He walked when we did. He carried a pack when we did. When we dropped our pack at the end of a long exercise, maybe a day or two of being in the field, and we dropped that pack for the last time on the parade ground, and we were completely exhausted and worn out. Well, he dropped his pack at the same time we did. And when we went to stand in line to get some hot food for the first time in a couple days, well, he went and stood in line as well. But the difference was, he stood on the other side of the table. He stood there with a serving spoon in his hand. See, our chaplain, he walked with us, and he served us. He didn't ask us to come to him in his office when we had a problem, but he was with us. He came to us. He experienced what we experienced. He suffered when we suffered. The letter to the Hebrews is all about, and can be summed up in this phrase, the superiority of Christ. See, Christ was superior to angels. He was superior to Moses. He was superior to the prophets. And that's what we see in the first 3 chapters of Hebrews, is the superiority of Christ. It'll go on beyond that. But I want to read to you in chapter 4, beginning in verse 3, where we read that Christ is superior to the Levitical priesthood. He's superior to the priesthood. We read this, "For we do not have a high priest who is unable to sympathize with our weaknesses, but one who in every respect has been tempted as we are, yet without sin." It was in one of the Jesus movies a few years ago that I really, for the first time, grasped something that I had read dozens of times. I've read about the temptation of Christ in the wilderness. I've read about that over and over. I see through other scriptures, it refers back to how Christ was tempted. But it was in one of those movies, as the scene is flashing rapidly back and forth between a sandaled foot, where people are worshiping and praising and bathing the foot and paying all kinds of attention to that. And then immediately the scene would flash to a nail being driven through a foot. And back and forth we saw this. And for the first time, I really grasped that the temptation of Christ was in fact really a temptation. That there must have been something in him, in his humanity, that said, this one appeals to me and this one doesn't. There's something wrong with this. The question I have is, if I were in that position, the question I have for myself if I was in that position, is which of those two options would I have chosen? Well, the author of Hebrews explains that our high priest, Christ, is a mediator of a superior covenant, a superior tabernacle, by means of a superior sacrifice. See, Christ chose the nails. And this time of year can be difficult for people. People find themselves in financial trouble during this time of year. Christmas brings that about. We overspend. Maybe some of you have lost a job, or you have other stresses related to your finances. There are other things that maybe make this season difficult. Maybe an illness in your family, maybe a recent death of a loved one. Maybe you just don't know what to do. Maybe you're lonely. This time of year in particular, with the year that we've had here in 2020, maybe you're isolated. Whatever it is, the value of what this text has to talk to us about, one of the things that really rises to the surface here is that whether you're being tempted to sin or whether you're in trials of other kinds, we have a high priest who's been where we've been, a high priest that can empathize with and sympathize with our struggles. I find that incredibly comforting, to know that there's nothing that I'm experiencing that he hasn't experienced first. He's walked down that road. It goes on to say in verse 16, this is incredible. It says, "Let us then with confidence draw near to the throne of grace, that we may receive mercy and find grace to help in time of need." Sometimes as a pastor, people will come to me and they'll say, would you pray for me about this, whatever particular issue in their life? And I'm privileged to do that. I find great joy in being able to pray for people and with people. But sometimes I get the feeling from some people that they're expecting that I can intercede for them where they don't need to. Maybe they don't know how. And what I want to draw your attention to is how incredibly powerful and how incredibly earth-shaking this idea is, that I will join with you in praying, but you can confidently approach the throne of grace